almost pulled over when I wasn't even in a car by a police officer. And I had other pieces that were dealing with police issues, but I wanted to kind of get away from that and think more about Black women and how they're seen historically in American art and European art, and this symbol of power. So how it came about is that I actually went to an artist residency in Galesburg, Illinois, at Knox College, where I taught for a semester. I taught a class. It was a really great class. They were awesome. But what I did was I did a series of drawings first. So I sent the message out to the community of Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, which is a really, really small town, about, I don't know, like 30,000 people, majority white town. So it was really hard for me to get what I wanted from the Black community. So I sent a message out asking people if they can send in images of a mother holding an image of her living son. Because what we often see contrary to that is, of course, when we catch these killings and these murders, immediately they go to the mother and she's crying and she's holding an image of her recently killed son or daughter or husband, whatever the case is. And I wanted to think more about life, and I wanted to think more about how to bring somebody into a subject that they have no idea about, right? Because unless you are familiar with the situation, know somebody that has happened to, or personally as a Black man, have been in a situation where you had a gun to your head and you were almost, you're thinking about dying, and what the people around you are gonna, how their reaction is gonna be, it's kind of hard to sympathize. So what I was thinking, so this is one of the drawings that I did. I asked for images from the community, and I got some back from the Black community, and then it wasn't a lot, so then I started asking images from my family to kind of supplement into that. So what I wanted to do was kind of collaborate also. So I told in the invite or the ask, I told the people that whoever sends in photos, I want to showcase those photographs along with the drawings that I do. So that's what I did during the end of my exhibition. I had the photographs, and then I had the name of the person who took the photograph, and I didn't care if they took a camera phone picture, if they had somebody take a professional photograph, whatever the case was. But I wanted to do these really simple drawings that went along with the photograph and like a collaboration. So this is a mother with her 2 living sons. And then this is the photograph. And the drawings were actually not that big. The drawings were about 11 by 12. They were pretty small drawings. But I wanted them to be really simple because I wanted more focus to be on the eyes, the face, and then specifically on them taking this photograph. So this is another one. And then this is the photograph. So I think I did like maybe, I don't know, like 8 or 9 of these drawings, and I had the photograph showing too. But before I went to Knox College, again, I thought more about my family, and I took some images of my grandmother, my other grandmother, and my mom. And those became the copper pieces, one of them that's in the exhibition upstairs. And I'll talk more about that once I get to them. So here's the first one. And this one, the title of the piece is Yeah, G-Ma Don't Play. So in thinking about how the world kind of, or how America kind of used images and video and news to kind of create some kind of sympathy for the other, it became used so much that people ignore it. So what I wanted to do again was say, okay, well, how would my grandma or my mother react if their son was killed, or their daughter was killed and things like that. But specifically, I wanted to talk about men and women in a way of mothers and sons, right? And she's holding an image of my uncle. The love image is actually when he got married, and then the image of my other uncle Kenneth. And my uncle Kenneth doesn't like this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. And he's kind of upset at me for doing it, but that's actually an image of him when he was in prison. So it's just thinking beyond how we see love, how we think about people, how, people are put in the box in a certain way as, that criminal, or being declared as a criminal, can't be loved in a certain way, or he can't be seen in a certain context. So this is one of the paintings. And also what I wanted to do is specifically with the copper came around and thinking about art history, and I just really like these really small Dutch paintings. A lot of people don't know that the small, like 17th century Dutch paintings and European paintings are done on copper. People think they're wood, or they just see these little small squares, but the copper is actually painted over with like an oil ground or just a regular ground that goes on a canvas or anything like that. Right, but while I was in grad school, I went on this Met tour, and that was a cool thing because I wasn't even in the class. I was like, "Can I come?" And he was like, "Yeah." So I went. But he talked about this Peter Paul Rubens painting, and it was a small Peter Paul Rubens painting, and it was called Young Scholar. So it was a boy, and he was reading a book, and it was on copper. And I kept looking at the painting, and I just liked the way it glowed. I liked the way the light kind of went through the paint and reflected back off the copper to kind of give it this really nice radiance. And he was like, you can paint directly on copper without putting down the ground. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let me see what that's about. So I went back to the studio and I did a self-portrait, but I also was thinking about this idea of how do you bring insight, again, how do you talk about insight into something that people don't know, and also exude a presence of power? Like, how do those contrary things come together in a way? And that's what I think, when I think of Black women, I think about power and being the structure of the Black family.
Yes.
And I wanted to show this idea and this presence of power, but at the same time, when somebody's looking at the painting, they see a reflection of themselves. So it kind of puts them in a position that they're never in and for some people, right? And whenever you look at that copper painting, you see a reflection of yourself, but it also tints or gives you like a brown or golden color. So the color of your skin is changed in an instance. So this is the other painting. This is the largest painting. I think it's like 55 by, I'm guessing 36 maybe. But this piece's title is Mom Says I'm Her Son. And basically that's a photograph from, I think, going from preschool to kindergarten, or kindergarten, first grade? Yeah, that time, there you go. But somebody was asking me about this painting. They were like, does your mom really dress like that all the time? And I was like, yeah, that's a regular, it's a normal thing. And I thought it was really interesting. I was giving another lecture at Harlem School of the Arts, and this man that specializes in Egyptology came all the way up to see the lecture because he thought this was the woman in the painting was specifically about Egyptian culture. And then we got this whole conversation about Egyptian culture. But no, that's just how she get down. But I really wanted this feeling that when you're looking at the painting, you're looking at somebody that really loves and has compassion for their kid, but at the same time will say, you're not messing with this. Don't mess with this. This is mine. And this is the painting that's upstairs. So the people that are in the painting, the one on the far left is my father. The one in the middle is my Uncle Carl. The one in the middle is my Uncle Al, and the one on the far right is my Uncle Carl. And everybody in these pieces, the point of it was that everybody's alive, and everybody's alive in all these pieces. So I also wanted to show you a video after this piece before we start doing the panel discussion, because the video really kind of expressed how I felt women would feel if this happened to me or happened to somebody I know close. So I think they're gonna hit play on that.
My son would never jeopardize anyone else's life by trying to pull a gun on an officer and the gun was not fire ready. These are some of the facts that came out in the trial, and I am so very, 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 very disappointed in the system here in the state of Minnesota, because nowhere in the world do you die from being honest and telling the truth. Now, these are some things that you need to know and recognize. There has always been a systemic problem in the state of Minnesota, and me thinking with my common sense that we would get justice in this case, but nevertheless, it never seems to fail us. The system continues to fail black people, and they will continue to fail you all. Like I said, because this happened with Orlando, when they get done with us, they're coming from you, for you, and all your interracial children. Y'all are next, and you'll be standing up here fighting for justice just as well as I am. I am so disappointed in the state of Minnesota. My son loved this state. He had one tattoo on his body, and it was of the Twin Cities, the state of Minnesota with TC on it. My son loved this city, and this city killed my son, and the murderer gets away. Are you kidding me right now? We're not evolving as a civilization. We're devolving. We have taken steps forward. People have died for us to have these rights, and now we're devolving. We're going back down to 1969. Damn! What is it gonna take? I'm mad as hell right now. Yes, I am. My firstborn one son died here in Minnesota. Under the circumstances, just because he was a police officer, that makes it okay. Oh, now they got free reign. He's found innocent on all counts. He's shot into a car with no regard to human life, and that's okay. Thank you, Minnesota. Thank you, Minnesota. That's all I have to say.
But essentially, before as we begin this panel discussion, that's how I felt. Of course, the women would be sad. Of course, men would be sad. Of course, there would probably be some crying going on. But knowing the women in my family, I'm pretty sure that's what it would look like. So I think that's important that we think about those things. So, thanks.
Because it gives a reality to what I'm talking about, and I think even more so the video she made a Facebook Live video. I was gonna show that one, but that was like, she's like really going off and going in. So I showed the one that that was on the news. So, but I think it's important.
Are you shown the whole series in exhibitions? Oh, sorry. Have you been able to show the whole series in exhibitions?
Yeah, but the only place I showed everything, including the drawings, even though I see them together, but at the same time I see the copper paintings a little separate from the drawings and the photographs. The only time all of those were together was at Knox College at that exhibit. The other time all the copper paintings were together was at the Harlem School of the Arts in Harlem, in New York. Yeah. So that was a time where everybody outside of where the works were created were able to see the work in a different space. But I think having the works at Knox was really interesting because, like I said, it's a really small town. It wasn't a lot of people. It's a very small liberal arts college. But they filled up the gallery space that they had aside, and that was really interesting. You know,
What kind of response did you get to the work?
I think for a lot of the students, because they have a small group of black students, I think they were really, really excited to see the work, in that city, in that space. I think all the students and a lot of the staff were really excited. I think even some of the community from Galesburg. There was nothing, I didn't get anything where, people were upset or like, why are you making this stuff, or anything like that. No, it was all good. It was all really good responses. I think there was some stuff in the local news about it, which was good. But what was interesting, because right before that, before I came there, that Knox College had a basketball game for women, for the women's college team. And I can't remember, I think they were in, where are you from? They were in St. Louis, somewhere, and they were having a basketball game. And one of the women on the team protested and laid her body down as part of support for Black Lives Matter and recent killings. And then the rest of the team supported, but that student, I think, got she wasn't able to play anymore for a certain couple of months from the coach for Knox College, and then they kind of had like a little mini revolution on campus because everybody was upset that they did that to that. I mean, I kind of, it's weird now because I kind of see college students as like little kids, but I mean, to that woman, but I think that was a part of, I hate to say it, but me being there and trying to give move the conversation in a new direction and for people to see outside of themselves. So.
Good for you. So, Mario, talk about some of the influences on your work.
Oh man, I say the biggest influence at the moment is Kerry James Marshall. I think I'll always say that. And then beyond that is the second one, as far as contemporary, is Richard Lewis. And I think Richard Lewis is often overlooked a lot of times. But I have to say that I don't think any painter, no matter what you do, can make a Richard Lewis painting. I promise you, I don't think it can be done. And I don't like to contextualize or compare black artists to, really famous white artists. But I see Richard Lewis as like a Lucian Freud, and how he paints and how he puts textures together. I think he's a very, very important artist. And then, other than that, going beyond that, it would be, Velázquez, Rembrandt. It'd be all the old European dudes. And I think, and then a couple of my friends right now. But a lot of times I like to kind of look at the world, because since I'm dealing with a certain realist in my art, I kind of look around me and look at the world in a way that pulls into my work, more so than art history. I think art history is just my basis, but it's definitely about what's happening. Yeah.
So are you still developing more work for this series?
I don't know. I think I want to say this series is done, but it's probably not. I don't really know. I think right now what I'm thinking about is because everybody doesn't know this, but I just went through surgery, and I'm just getting back into working. I'm just getting back into drawings. But before, right after the Mothers and Sons series, it was a way for me to kind of talk about myself without talking about myself. Because I get tired of painting myself a lot of times, which is why I went into talking specifically about Black women in painting. But everything that I've kind of been through and that I'm thinking about now, I'm kind of diving back into self-portraiture and wanting to deal specifically with how I see myself in this world, and also talking about Black men. So that's what I'm working on right now. I don't know if I just feel like those paintings are very specific. You know, I don't know if I'll do anything else like that. I know I will do more copper paintings.
Sure.
Yeah.
But maybe not related to that.
Exactly.
So tell us more about your grandmother.
Oh man. So my grandma Helen Moore, she's sitting right up there. She has been like anybody in my family can tell you that the person I look up to the most in my family is probably Helen Moore. I mean, because it is. But she has just been a really major figure in Detroit as far as working for public education and working for education for, you know, the city of Detroit and kids who live in Detroit. And, and she's been doing it for a long time. Some people don't know that there are, court files being, filed with her name on it and things like that. And, so she's been traveling to D.C., she's often in New York, and then, when she's doing something there for National Action Network or some other law stuff, I'll go visit, or she'll visit me and we'll hang out. But she's always been all over the place. I did all of my, traveling from when I was a kid, like all through my grandma, going on trips with her. And like she was so involved in all the Detroit schools that there were moments when I went to Malcolm X Academy for elementary middle school, and then I went to Cass. But there were moments, when I'll look up and her head would just pop in the room, and I'd be like, I wasn't doing nothing. Like she's, yeah, exactly. But she's extremely important, and she continues to work every day. I'm always trying to keep up with her. If we just walking down the street, I'm always 5 steps behind her because she's always running somewhere. So I mean, that's the type of person she is.
Well, we love having that in painting with her starring in it in the exhibition.
Yeah, thank you.
We get lots of compliments on it.
Okay, so I'm Rhonda Williams. I'm the research assistant in the Museum Center. And myself, along with Erin Falker, will be asking questions of Mara too. She is the assistant curator at the Charles Wright Museum. So looking at the paintings, in one way, this is interesting because you're kind of giving a perspective of Black womanhood, sort of. And it's the opposite perspective of what we typically see, like you said, because we always see like the sadness that comes behind unarmed Black men being killed. And so, but in your paintings though, it's not, although these are trying to present a different idea and the men are all still alive, you don't see the women as joyous or celebratory or anything like that. And I'm curious why, or if you chose to present them in the way that you did instead of smiling or something like that, and if that is somewhat trying to show just the concern that they have, even though their sons are still alive.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of concern, but I think it's more about protection. Like, I definitely want the paintings and the faces in the paintings to give off a sense of power and presence. That when you're standing in front of that painting, that image or that idea of that person, because of course it's not real, right, is giving you this presence that you feel a sense of power. You feel a sense of presence, especially because if we think about European painting, often black women have been in the background or on the side of the paintings. And if we talk about how black women have been depicted in paintings, even by some of the best painters in Europe, their skin is almost like a shadow. Mm-hmm. And you know, you just have white eyes and white teeth. Like there's no depth to this color of the skin or to how things shift in light. You know, there's none of that that's given to that figure. And I wanted that to be present, you know, so that was really important, but it's definitely about protection and a sense of power.
So I'm still trying to formulate this question in my mind, but what you were saying about because I'm an art historian, I love the Renaissance, also an artist. A lot of my work deals with reincorporating or talking about black women in art historical settings where they would never be found. So you're looking at these pieces and they sort of seem familiar, but the fact there's black bodies in this setting makes it almost an impossibility. So what I'm asking is kind of for you to talk a little bit more about the copper and why that becomes important as a connection to this kind of art historical past, this art historical precedent, and how you're connecting black bodies into the canon, into this kind of art history, and this, this kind of mythical past that we have, and you're putting these women in a place where they've never been before. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So, I think the copper has a lot of different important aspects to it. And definitely thinking more about it beyond the first initial thought of making these pieces is that copper is also seen historically as like a representation of wealth. Like, it's worth something. Like, me just getting those pieces, the only way I was able to buy that copper was because I was in the residency and they gave me some money for it. Because the copper pieces that big are really expensive, So I think it's a matter of like literally showing wealth, like the copper being within itself having wealth, but also this idea of they're also, especially in Detroit, some of the first things that are stolen out of homes are pieces of copper, out of a lot of the homes in the D. But beyond that, it puts them, like you said, in a place that they. Sometimes historically they're shown that way, but for the most part, no. In a place that we never really see them. Even in the context of having women in paintings, like let's say there's a black figure, a black woman and a white woman in a painting. The black woman is often to the back or the side serving the white woman, or in other cases, the white woman is nude, but the black woman is sexualized even if she has clothes on. Which is something that's really complicated and interesting, or maybe not interesting, but complicated. But I wanted the surface of the copper to mean something, to have something beyond. I felt like I just couldn't do these pieces on canvas or paper or something like that. The other interesting thing is this idea of time, because over time, hopefully, the people that have this work don't really touch the copper with their bare hands because that's gonna oxidize. And that's expected, but the painting won't be affected at all. Mm-hmm. So while things may age around them, they'll still be there and have a very powerful presence. So that's also important. Yeah. Depends on who, just don't touch it.
So in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, I think that your work will kind of fit into that. As a black male, I guess, what are you trying to add to that? Or do you feel like art in general during this time can somehow play a role in shifting the narrative of black manhood or something like that? And I feel like your work kind of gives humanity, this level of humanity to Black males and their mothers. And so I guess like what role do you feel like that's playing in terms of creating change for like social and racial injustice?
Man, it's a lot. But as far as like Black Lives Matter, you know, I think everybody is dealing with these issues at the same time. You know, we're all thinking about these things, but I think what happened with Black Lives Matter is it's important that it was formulated by, you know, Black women. And I think that was important in thinking about my work and how important Black women are in the Black community, and us trying to understand that, and like, what does that look like, and how do we talk about that? You know, because often it's ignored, or they become like bystand. You know, they're pushed to the side, even like in the civil rights movement, and you know, kind of formulating a lot of the speeches that were, you know, spoken, and then not being recognized as some of the really important figures. So that became really important for this work. Beyond that, what was the other question you asked?
How does your work kind of play a role in creating change in like social injustice?
So like I said earlier, is that it was interesting. Somebody said earlier this idea of the 1-2 punch, right? I like the idea of, or I like the thing of making something look so amazing, no matter what it is, that you see that thing, and then when you come upon it, or you come closer, like almost like making like a really small painting, or a really big painting, but you come upon it and you get closer to it, and you actually see what it's about. And I think there's something that happens where you have to recognize what's going on in that piece. Like whether that's going to make you go out and start a revolution, or make you go out and change some laws, it is going to make you think. So what I'm really trying to get people to do is think, you know, and to see other people's perspectives, because I think that's really important to making change. I don't know, or necessarily, I think as artists we have to ask questions. Our work has to ask questions. I'm not trying to answer any questions. I'm just presenting what I'm asking to the world, and for people to think about those questions. And I think that will make change.
So along the same lines, talking about what's going on now in society, and this is going to be a more personal question, so feel free to just tell me to back off. So I'll talk about our exhibition for a second. We have a piece, a video art by some poets, local poets, and Sharina Rodriguez-Sharp. She speaks specifically about Philando Castile and the incident that happened that led to his murder. And she has a quote in that poem which strikes a chord with me every time I hear it. How old were you when you and your blackness had to start playing together? This baby girl is 4. She was talking with the girl in the car. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned about your earlier work, talking about instances where you had interactions with the police, or talking about police and these situations where there's a power struggle. Can you talk a little bit about either your personal experience, either whether that's something that actually happened, or more your philosophical or mental state around those issues?
I can talk about that. So, I mean, I think it goes beyond the police. I think it goes to a point, and I think with some of this, you have to understand my family, and that my grandma was the type of person, to celebrate Kwanzaa, and we talk about Malcolm X, you know what I mean? So like that's where I grew up in, that's what I understood. But at the same time, I was still surrounded by all different communities, especially with my mother, as being an arts figure in Detroit, and being involved with everybody and being open and loving to everyone. I just recognize myself as a kid. I'm just a person. I'm a kid. But I think the first time that I kind of understood that I was black was I was on a trip I don't know, I can't remember if it was a family trip or a church trip, but I was with my grandma, and I had to be like, I was pretty young, I don't know, like maybe 10 or something like that, maybe 9, and I went into a little small store, and I was walking around the store, and the clerk at the store came out of the, where he was and followed me around. And, I didn't know what was going on. I'm just like looking around, looking at magazines and looking at stuff, being a kid. And then he was like, "You need any help?" And I'm like, "No, I'm cool, I'm just doing my thing." And, and I walked around some more, and he literally followed me every step. And then I came out of that store, and then I just sat there and thought about it. And I was like, oh, he thought I was going to steal something. Oh, it was like, oh, he did that because I was, because I never had that experience before that moment. But after that, dealing specifically with the police, I mean, I miss driving, being from Detroit, but I now live in Brooklyn, New York. But I got pulled over so many times, it was like, I think, what a lot of people don't understand, especially for Black men, is that you have a moment where you get pulled over, right? And you're like, okay, I can deal with that. I wasn't really doing nothing. That car over there was going fast as me, whatever. And then the next day, you get pulled over again. You're like, all right, well, that's cool. I'm good. Then you get pulled over again, and you get pulled over again, and you get pulled over again, and you get pulled over again. And then there's a point where you're like, when can I be a human being? When can I just be me and not be racialized? When can I be not demonized? And there's almost a breaking point where you're like, I don't care what happens now because I want to be a man. There's that point where you get to that level. And I think that's something that a lot of people tend to not think about or recognize. Like, how many times has this person been put in this context before this happened? What happened in between those distances, right? But I guess the really big situation for me was being with my family, going to a bar to celebrate, I think, my cousin's 30th birthday. I'm gonna make this story real fast, so you don't have to struggle through it. But basically, we were with my uncle had a friend with him, and she was really young. She was from down south, so she doesn't really understand Detroit. We were in the bar, and these guys kept looking at her. I was like standing pretty close by to make sure nothing happened. Basically, they surrounded her. I tried to get her to go. She didn't want to leave. Then they punched her. And it was a big fight. They basically started beating up on her, right? So then, we got into this great fight. And we all left, got into a car. She got into some cars with my other cousin, but it was me, my uncle, and my other cousin. We got into a car, and we were just downtown. My mother still lives, she lives in Midtown. So we just had a couple stops come off the freeway. So we come off the freeway, and then a cop car pulls us over. Then 5 or 6 other state troopers, cop cars come and pull us over. And then I'm driving, and while this happens, a gun comes to the window pointing at me, telling me they want the guy in the back, which is my uncle. And I'm like, this is not my car. I need to understand the windows, how things work. This is my first time actually driving this car. So all that happens basically. They yank my uncle out on the other side. They beat him up. They ask him for his ID. He gives them the ID eventually. They take us to the front of the cop car, right? And this whole time in my mind, I'm thinking, man, if they kill me, my grandma gonna be so mad. I don't think y'all understand what y'all doing. Like, I just don't know. While all of this is happening, right? They didn't read us any rights, anything, but we got handcuffs on. I basically give them my ID. They take my uncle's ID. They find out we have no records. My uncle this whole time is saying, I'm military, whatever. And then they basically let us go. They say, have a nice day. Thanks for serving our country. So we leave, we go to the hospital. It's a cop there, he's listening to the story of what's happened to my uncle. Then he tells us to go over to this police station. We go to the police station, the guy that picked up my uncle is there asking him questions while we're trying to file a report on the police. Nothing ever happens, nothing ever gets solved, nothing ever gets done. That was like my first big situation. So yeah,